Hi, everybody. My name is Alexander Argento, and I'm Vice President of Operations here at AKAM Florida. And here with me today to present AKAM LifeCycle are Ken Greene, CEO of AKAM, and Ross Kellman, Principal of the LifeCycle Facilitation Services. Good to have you both here. Appreciate you.
Good to be here.
Thanks very much. I believe that we're all keenly aware that maintaining critical building components has become increasingly more expensive, time-consuming, and complicated. As we look to future-proof our properties, the LifeCycle program is a proprietary AKAM offering that uses physical QR tags to generate a digital asset inventory and track the necessary repair and/or replacement of physical assets over time by leveraging our network of vendors, improved pricing, invoicing automation, and industry expertise, while simultaneously documenting and retaining critical asset history. Now, I know I said a lot there, and I want to ask Ken a couple of questions. And for anyone who has questions, please use the Q&A below. We'll put your questions in there, and we'll get to them as we go along. So, Ken, great to have you here. Why LifeCycle?
Thanks, Alex. Well, this is exciting. Is an exciting initiative for us. AKAM now is almost 500 properties large. We've got great scale and leverage, and we really want to use that to the benefit of our customers. And so, we look across the portfolio, people always ask, board members always ask us, how do we lower risk? How do we lower expenses? How can we do things better and more efficiently? And this program hits all of those things. And so at this point, we're in a position to invest in something that we think is industry changing. We're the only management company in our space that is doing something like this at this point. We would like nothing more. And I always say this, and Ross will maybe cringe a little bit, but we would like nothing more to walk into a board meeting 18 months from now and said, not only did we lower the risk profile of your property, but we saved you more money because of the AKAM relationship than you paid us a management fees. Whether we get there or not, to be determined, and we have to prove that out. But certainly that is the aim and the goal. And so we're very excited about the program.
And Ken, I think it's really interesting as you're speaking to boards. Is this something that comes up a lot? Do people ask you, like, we have an issue here?
Yeah, so boards are always asking, how's the best, how do we plan for capital, replacement and capital plans? How do we fix a part? Should we do replacement versus repair and maintenance? What other costs can I expect in the future? So all of these things get answered through this program. Is really a way to manage your capital assets in a very smart and thoughtful way, and making sure that we're always maximizing the right expense decisions, optimizing the right expense decisions, and optimizing the warranties that we have on certain pieces of equipment. So very exciting for us.
Yeah, and I think, Ken, to your point, that buildings start aging from the minute they go in service, right? Sure. They don't stop aging. So I think this is really addressing that. So Ross, with no further ado, great to see you. And why don't you take us through?
Thank you, Ken and Alex. So for the next maybe 15 or 20 minutes, I'll take you through a little more detail what Alex shared with you to start. Just kind of what is this program and what does it really mean to you as a property board and property owners. So let's just look at kind of the overview here. So we're going to start talking about, I think Alex mentioned the QR codes or the tagging of the equipment. That's really where it all starts. We have to know what's in the building. So as we look at all the critical assets that are in the building, one of the things that we actually do, we start on the roof. It's a great place to start. It's easier to go down than it is to go up. So we start at the top. As we're looking at different assets, we are looking for what we call equipment plates. So we want to understand what truly is that piece of equipment. Where's the serial number? There's an example of that at the top left here. and also in the bottom left as we look at pieces of equipment. So we want to fix a QR code to that, and I'll get to what that QR code really does and what it allows us to do on property. And we also are, again, we're going all over the property and into very high areas, very low areas, very tight areas. Our team is going to be tagging everything with the help of the property. And then we're taking pictures of these tags, and all of this information then lives within our system. And this will be accessible to all the users go forward. So once we have the assets known, now we have a good cataloging of all the assets, which is a good starting point. We know at that point in time everything is there. And as we move forward, if assets, and I'll say this, I call assets and equipment, we talk about pieces of equipment, we refer to them as assets. But as they go in and out of service, we also track continually. So we start from day one, and then we move forward, and that becomes like a documented listing of everything that's on site. The next step that's really important is we want to look at the vendor side, the service providers, the vendors that are coming on site to do work, not your internal staff, but folks that are coming from the outside. And we want to start to benchmark that, the pricing, service, the type of service they're providing. As we look at preventative maintenance, sometimes we find that the service that's being provided is not really, the scope is not really servicing the building properly. We're not looking at things properly. So our team will advise on that. We'll consult with the property and help make sure that the right services and preventative maintenance services are being looked at. So as we start to get into the pricing side, or looking at the external providers coming in, we're going to look at those contracts and the services, as I mentioned. We're going to be connecting to our technology. So the vendors that we are using, which will be your vendors, they're not LifeCycle's vendors. We work with your vendors, and then we'll augment that as needed, or as the business dictates. We'll connect them to the technology so they can interact as well. And then we're going to negotiate and evaluate contracts. We want to really make sure that you have the right programs, the right labor rates, and we'll talk about labor rates in a minute. Preventive maintenance, as I mentioned before, we have the right scope in those contracts. We're touching the right piece of equipment. We're going to manage the warranties if they're available. So we're going to need that from the property. I'll show you that in a moment as well, where that kind of resides in the technology. And then we also are going to manage the certificates of insurance to make sure vendors coming on site have proper insurance based on your requirements. And we're using AKAM's general requirements because they're pretty steep. We'll make sure that the certificates are up to date, and when they're starting to go out of date, our team will reach out to those service providers and vendors to make sure that we get the right documentation back. So it's something you don't have to worry about any longer. And as I mentioned, as we look at these agreements, sometimes the existing vendors that you're using, for good reason, they provide good services and you want to keep them. We'll look to renegotiate those contracts as well. And trust me, we've seen some significant savings as we work with existing vendors in your system.
I think, Ross, just to reiterate that point, the existing vendor is that we are not replacing people or asking people to change. If they like someone, they can stay with it, and that firm can work all the way through the process on the platform.
Yeah, the LifeCycle does not dictate or prescribe vendors. We work with you to understand what your needs are. If you're happy with your existing vendors, we typically find that you're not happy with some vendors, and we will source them for you, and we will negotiate those contracts. From what Ken said earlier, in order for us to achieve that delta of the cost of the property management fee, we're going to have to negotiate, right? We have to get better contracts in place, but some of the negotiation revolves around the right vendors, right service, and also assuring that the time spent and the turnaround time that we get vendors out is quicker, so you have less hours of labor of workers on site. And that happens a lot. Sometimes it's not just the labor rate, as we'll look at here in just a minute. Sometimes the labor rate isn't the most important factor, because it can be a very inexpensive labor rate, but we look at total cost of ownership here. So we're looking at the true cost of maintaining your assets, not just a figure of labor or travel charge, those sorts of things. So in this example, this is actually an AKAM property, one of the assessments we did initially. The current labor rate, as you see, $362.50. The negotiated rate, $180. That is not uncommon, though we also see significant savings in travel or trip costs. We'll see in helper costs, overtime. We try to minimize overtime and holiday pay. So again, these are areas that when we work to negotiate with your existing vendors, even we tend to lower some of, especially trip costs, overtime costs, helper costs. We tend to bring down those rates. In this case, 50% reduction. We'll get to Ken's goal pretty easily if we can see these types of savings. However, it's not always that dramatic. In some cases, it actually will cost more. Again, the cost might be more, but not the total cost. So we want to focus on total cost of ownership. In this case, the property savings was a little over 11%, and that is net of LifeCycle's fee. So after we are paid our 7.75% fee, that's what's left over coming back to you. So that's $20,000 coming back to that property after my company gets paid, after all the services that we provide are completed. I want to take real quick some of the detail and the transparency that we look for as well. This is an example on the left side where it says current. That's a current invoice coming out from an AKAM property. On the right side is an example of a LifeCycle invoice. What we're going to point out really here is the itemization of the charges. So again, transparency is fundamental to our business, and it's not fundamental to what we're seeing in the industry. So as we look on the left side, you see a total figure of balance. On the right side, you see an itemized list all the way down to the materials cost, the labor, as well as the rate and time, and the trip charges, as I mentioned before. So we want to make sure it's itemized, it's understood. So when you go to pay your bills, you know exactly what you're paying for.
And I think, Ross, just to that point, because we had a question in the Q&A we wanted to answer, while this is not taking the place of a structural integrity reserve study and any new statutory requirements, the difference of what labor costs versus what material costs, and then the actual life cycle of that material, we're going to show a bit later in the presentation. So just wanted to share with that person's question that this actually can very much benefit you from your future costs that you would incur from a reserve perspective.
Yeah, and actually, Alex, I'll address that because I probably should address that when we were talking about the tagging. One of the steps in our tagging process, once we tag the property, take the pictures, we now have an inventory. We take that and synchronize that with industry standardized information against those pieces of equipment to understand what the useful life is, as well as at that point in time, what the replacement costs. So that includes materials, it will include freight, and also include the labor to install it. And I'll show you what that looks like in our reporting in just a minute. So the next area that we really focus on of the 4 key areas is the technology itself. So one of the things that makes LifeCycle pretty unique is that our technology is mobile. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be sitting on a property. You can be halfway across the world as long as you have an internet connection and you have access with the user ID and passcode. You can get into the technology to place a work order. So in a moment, I'll show you what that looks like on a mobile app. But something else that we really that took us years to kind of fine tune is this automated workflow. So that when the property goes in to place a work order, everything is prompted for them and all the vendors are connected and all the information is stored all the way through payment of invoicing. So our goal here is to minimize the time it takes to get work performed on property. And we're trying to create a more efficient environment so that your folks can, number one, have an operation that's up and running, no issues in the building, and they can also take care of other maintenance services that they're performing themselves. So what does that look like? I'm going to start from the left here. I'm going to go to the right. This is a real illustration of our mobile technology. So the second phone here has a barcode or a QR code that actually, Alex, I think just got. I don't know if you're going to show one in your hand, but
I just got it. I just got it.
So the barcode is where it all starts, that QR code. So in this case, just like if you go to a restaurant and you have a touchless menu and you use your phone and it brings up the menu, this actually brings up a prompted menu based on that configuration we just spoke about. So in this case, we're going to be looking at a commercial water heater. You'll see that first arrow shows it's pointing to the number 1901, which is actually the tag code. In our entire universe, there will only be one code tagged 1901. So once that piece of equipment goes out of service, it'll be gone, but we will maintain that asset information forever. Moving on, as we click, we'll be just touching the screen. We'll be clicking along. That fourth screen is telling us, hey, what is it that's going on with this tank that we need to take a look at? In this case, we have a leak. Not uncommon, unfortunately. We're going to select that it's a leak, and then the system will prompt you to tell us a little bit more about what the problem is. So we'll type in a little bit of detail, and you can type in, I think it's 300 characters or so. And then when we go to submit that, so in this case, we'd save it, and then it would give us the option to submit that work order. When we do that, it's going to give us another little piece of information that may be important. That's warranty, that there's a warranty in place here. So what does that mean? Well, if there's a warranty, you shouldn't be paying for that service if it's covered. Even in our mobile app, we're going to show you what that warranty is and what the expiration, start and end dates of that warranty are. So in that second screen, that second phone, if you were to click on warranty, you'd actually see what the warranty is. In this case, it's materials for 2 years, 5 days. That was remaining. 3 years for leaking tank. So we are managing this behind the scenes. So when this goes through the process of service, comes out with an invoice, if that's warranty work that is not to be paid for by you, that will be redirected to make sure that the manufacturer pays for that. This is something we see more than I would like to see, but it's a good thing our technology catches that. But the only way it's going to catch it is if your property provides us with the warranty information to load. So once we have that, we understand we understand it's a warranty. We submit the request. Again, more prompts to make sure we're moving in the right direction here. Do you want an estimate or a quote, or do you just want the work done? So you do have an option if you want an estimate. In many cases, I think properties will want some estimates, especially for larger repairs or capital repairs. In this case, we're just going to get the work done, and now all of a sudden I hit save and I have a requested work order. It shows submitted in green. It tells me when it was created at 1:46 or 1:45 p.m. today. But the beauty of this next piece, the next screen, is that we're starting to capture everything that happens from the time that work order is created until the time that the service has been performed to your satisfaction and invoiced. So all of that information is stored within our technology forever, as long as you're a client of ours.
And I think, Ross, just if you don't mind, back up just one,
Sure.
that history for those of you watching, especially board members where you're approving invoices or you weren't there when that piece of equipment was purchased. This is just a great, powerful way to build that digital footprint of the different pieces of equipment on your property. So there's just way too many to remember. No one's going to do that. So as you can see in that second phone, A.O. Smith, what the warranty was, all the way to what happened to it, you can search, you can talk about, and it's not anecdotal. So I think this is really, really powerful, and wanted to point that out to those watching, because it might not be that easy to see that this is really creating that digital footprint of history for your community.
And just to add on to that, Alex, this information is available in a desktop version. So if you have a larger screen, there's a very similar view. All the information that's available in the mobile app is also available on a desktop. And again, you can be anywhere. You don't have to be in the building to start a work order, to review it, to approve it, to look at the historical information, pull reporting, et cetera. That's all available. So
and just last week here alone in South Florida, I think all of us can sort of relate to about 7,000 calls within 24 hours for just a little bit of rain. So this is incredibly powerful. Again, not having to be at the property when an event may be going on.
Yeah. So the last piece that really I think is the most important, or we think is the most important to many of you on the phone today, is the financial reporting. what do we do with all this information that we're collecting? Well, we want to make sure that we have the ability to provide that back to the AKAM management team so they can help guide the boards as they're doing budgets and looking at CapEx projects or just general repair and maintenance. So we're going to share a couple screens with you of some of the reporting that we have. So in this case, we call this an asset tree. So we look at this from kind of a categorization. We have 130 categories, I think, in LifeCycle. But in this case, we're looking at we're going to search. We're going to type in tank list. You could search in a tag number. There's many different ways to search this. In this case, we're going to look at this tank list item. It brings us right to that item. We have an opportunity now to look at the details. So there's an arrow on the left side that's pointing to click for asset details. You take your cursor over, you click on it, and voila, here we go. It's going to give you all this great information that's stored all across our system. But we created this screen. We believe this is the most important of the information that you're going to need quickly. So that top left arrow where it says asset details. That information, again, remember the equipment plates that we talked about earlier on, that's pulling directly from those equipment plates or from our industry databases, making sure we know what that actual item is. If I move to the right where it says warranty, that's what you saw in that screen. That's giving us the warranty information that's active. If it's expired, it would say expired, and or if there was not one, that would be blank. And then below that, where it says PM schedule, that's the scheduled preventative maintenance based on the contracts with, in this case, would probably be an HVAC company that would be coming out on some frequency. This information is also provided. We push this information to the property on a monthly basis to show all of your preventive maintenance contracts that are to be scheduled, to make sure that it's just a reminder. And we're working on some other ways to make that available, but it's always available in the reporting side. And then on the right side, we think this is a really important area, which is the replacement. If it's red, red's not good. Red means there's a problem. And this is letting us know that it's giving us the replacement costs, that top right, $15,400. It's giving us the freight costs, the replacement installation cost. So this is breaking down the true cost to replace this item. And we're looking at this from a 45% ratio of spend to replacement value. So how much have you actually spent on repair of an item? And once it eclipses 45%, it starts to hit yellow and red, because we want to give you time. So I'm going to back out of this real quick. If I went back to my main screen, we can also look at the work orders themselves. When you click on it, you can actually see the work orders that are performed. This screen extends far off to the right. Again, this is just an easier way to access this information than going into the system, drilling into different work orders. We're trying to make it very simple at the asset level. And then the real report that I think is most beneficial to especially a board is the watch list report. And some people refer this as a stoplight report, but it's that when we get red and yellow, or yellow and red, as I mentioned before, this is where we're looking at, there's a remaining useful life that we've taken from industry standards in our assessment of the equipment. And we're starting to see where that threshold is, of that 45%, where we're going over the cost of the repair, that it would be more beneficial to you to replace that item. So this should give you the yellow. As it hits yellow, it's going to give you an opportunity to plan. And if it hits red, that means you've already eclipsed this number. So we don't want to see red. That's not a color you want to see. We want to see greens, and then we want to see yellows, because we know that equipment ages, as Alex said earlier. New building starts to age as soon as it is built. So we want to make sure that you have proper time to accrue those dollars, and it's not surprising you as a board. And that is one of the foundational kind of reasons we created LifeCycle, was because we recognized that there was all these surprises, these $80,000, $200,000 surprises that boards get, and that's just not a great way to run a business. LifeCycle is trying to address that by putting all that information at your fingertips. So,
and just before you leave that screen, Ross,
oh.
I think for those watching also, that status column all the way to the right that starts in red is able to be adjusted. So Ross, the 45% that LifeCycle is using based on some of your industry expertise and your thought and planning. If a community felt, you know what, we might need to edge that up a bit because that's really where our forecasting and future planning is, no problem, right? We can adjust it.
Yeah, sure. And that there's third column to the right, the replacement threshold. We can adjust that for you up or down. If there's certain pieces of equipment that you want to have a different level, we can adjust that. 45 is what we use again, because it allows you to see something usually far in advance. So it's not an emergency and you're not strapped to figure out how you're going to pay for it. Because that's the last thing you want to go back to your owners with.
100%. And again, I think just from us and myself sitting on a board as well, that I can take a quick snapshot of looking where I am against dollars, against big ticket items. And again, those non-budgeted surprise repairs, which boards struggle, communities struggle with all the time. At least I can really take a look where I am every year, and we can adjust for that, which is just something we've never had the chance to do before anywhere. So again, I think this is great, but I just wanted to point out to those watching that threshold of replacement can be adjusted.
Thanks for pointing that out. Just kind of in closing here, again, we talked about the tagging of the assets. That's just an important. Some properties just want to know what they have. They have old buildings and they don't even know where things are or what's there. So that inventory list, if you will, that cataloging is very important. But I'd say this, all the features that we provide here from the technology and our service and advisory consulting view, we really need the information from the property. We need participation and volunteering of information. So it's, we don't know what we don't know. So as we get started, there is a element of kind of working together, collaboration to make sure that we do know what the warranties are. We know who the vendors are, so we can start to work with them. There's a lot of connectivity behind the scenes, and it's a little bit of a startup piece. But once we get going, it takes us about 12 to 14 weeks to get a property live. And again, that depends on how much participation we have at the property. But we want to get you live and going quickly. It takes some time, but once we get it moving, we can manage it, maintain it. We can support you in different ways to advise with problems that you might have, along with the AKAM team. We are part of the team. We want you to look at us that way. And the other thing that, just before I stop this presentation, AKAM is providing the owners with something that we've not seen in this industry. We've worked in other industries where we can leverage the scale of the entities we work with. And that's something that is very unique with AKAM, the number of properties, not just in Florida, but also across the country up north for now, and as they grow. So that's something LifeCycle is going to take advantage of to drive down costs as we have great visibility now into what's happening across the system. So we look forward to working with everyone. Hopefully we get a chance to spend some time with you individually if you have more questions, but I think there's some in the chat now.
Yeah, let's run through a couple of these. LifeCycle program cost being absorbed by AKAM or being offered as an add-on to communities association management contract. Ken, I don't know if you want to speak to the cost and the investment in the tagging part, but we could start there.
Yeah, so AKAM is investing our dollars in the entire asset tagging piece. It's I can tell you it's not inexpensive, but it's an investment in the relationship with all of you. We think it's an important risk management thing, and we do think it's a differentiator between us and other management companies. We think will be, this will be a successful program, and it'll be a reason why you stay with AKAM, for over many years. And so we're making that investment. And then the cost, as you purchase goods, it's a pay per play. So you're paying, you're paying the commission as part of the of ordering the goods and the capital items. But it's, net, there should be, significant savings for you overall. And that's how we're building the program.
Yeah. And Ross, maybe just speak to a minute just about what that vendor network looks like, just sort of the size and the breadth of that.
Yeah, so the network is growing all the time, but right now we have access to over 37,000 vendors in about 80 different categories, some that aren't relevant to the property management space, other industries you work with. But there's no shortage of providers out there. But we also want to make sure in the Florida market, we're finding the best providers, which I'm sure many of the properties will help us with. Alex, I know you will as well, to make sure we're leveraging the folks that we have a good reputation, have a good track record, and then also maybe introduce other providers in that maybe no one's used before, because we are looking at national, regional, and local when we source.
And I think just to jump on that bandwagon a bit is it can't be understated as we go forward here in Florida after July 1 with sort of Condo 3.0, that documentation and disclosure is going to be, top three probably for folks to be thinking about. This is a completely digital system. It is something that is there. The reporting structure is clear. You can hit a button and email it. This is not, for boards to now burden their in-house staff with invoice, aggregation and collection. This is just another way that you can sort of come and follow along with improvements, I think, in technology. So that's, I think, a byproduct, but I think it's a really important thing to mention. I think also, and Ross, you talked about this, tracking warranties. Just want to state that again. The idea that if somebody has a warranty and it's associated with that tag, you're tracking it all the way through to warranty end.
Correct. But again, we can only track the warranties that we're aware of.
Yep.
And we have a team that works behind the scenes. Every invoice that gets processed, there is a trigger in the system that will, if there is a warranty, it'll make somebody take a look at it, clear it. But we have recouped a good amount of money for our clients where they were charged or about to be charged for warranty work. The nice thing is you don't know it when it happens because we're catching it behind the scenes. But I think it's just that confidence and comfort that knowing that there's more than just personal property looking at this now. You have a team of people that are running through all this, live, real people, whether it's emergency work orders, regular work orders. There are live humans actually paying attention to it.
Excellent. And just lastly, the cost of the service, Ross, I think you said it was a 7.75% or something.
Yeah, so we negotiated a special rate with AKAM given their size. It's 7.75%, a percentage of the invoices that are coming through the system. And again, as we looked at that savings example before, that 11.18% savings was net of that 7.75%. So that savings for that property was actually over 19%. But what they actually got to feel was that 11.1%. So our goal is our goal that Ken has given us and our challenge is to try to offset management fees. It would give me and my team so much pleasure if we come back in a year and say we did it. And I do think we are going to be able to do that. Some of the properties, again, some properties spends not as much, so it may be more difficult. But it is our goal to offset our fees with savings because we want this to be net neutral at worst case, but we're still giving you all the great services and providing you with the technology. But everything we've seen from the customer we work with, we have yet to see a customer that we haven't shown a net savings to.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. Guys, we said we would do it in 30 minutes. It's 36, so by my watch. So great job. Really appreciate it. For all of you at home, any further information you want about the program, just speak to your property managers. They will get in touch with us. Myself here in Florida, Chris Alkers in New York, and Ross and his team will be happy to schedule a time to speak to a board and present in more detail if necessary. But again, to Ken and Ross, thank you very much for your time today, guys. And we'll see everybody on the next webinar. Thanks a million.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Be well. Bye-bye.